It's a short talk where peace begins. We talk life, love, and what's within. Movies, healing, self-care flow. Real talk, safe space, let it grow. It's a short talk where hearts unwind. Sip your peace, speak your mind. It's not your talk, feel the vibe. It's your moment, come alive.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Eastern Shore Talk, your podcast for all things self-care and movies. This first time tuning in, welcome. We're glad to have you. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment, subscribe. If you're listening on one of the other podcast platforms, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment or review. It helps us big time. This is episode 99. I'm Jay Watson.
Woohoo!
Cathy Castle.
Yeah. And I'm Chris Moore.
And Chris is joining us on the penultimate to 100 episodes of Eastern Shore Talk. That's crazy. I remember when we started and Chris came on early on and it was probably in the teens, like 18 or something. And now we're on 99.
Well, sadly, Jay, doesn't that mean there's a lot of connection between mental health and movies?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to kind of get into today. So Chris is always gracious enough to pop on. I don't want to say anytime we ask him, but he's been very gracious to come on pretty frequently. We always love to have him. If you're not aware, he's an Easton native. He's a fellow member of the class of '85 at Easton High School.
Yeah.
Has been in the Hollywood producing game for his entire adult life. You can IMDb or Google him, and this look list is Oscar-winning
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what I want to be like that guy who coached Indiana. Just Google me.
Yeah, I'm a winner. Just Google.
I'm a winner. Google me.
That's great.
And he did it with a straight face too. Like that's just how he feels.
Yeah, that's a hell of a season they had.
Yeah, but if some of you might know, here recently we had Netflix is attempting to buy Warner Brothers, part of the Warner Brothers Discovery umbrella, and it got me thinking about not only the connection between movies and self-care, but kind of the troubling state that the movie theater industry is in our country right now. So I thought it'd be great to have Chris come on and kind of talk about that. So anyway, for any of you who aren't aware, so a few months ago, Netflix decided they wanted to buy Warner Brothers. Now, Warner Brothers is basically Warner Brothers Discovery. They've been Time Warner. They've had different iterations of Warner Brothers within that umbrella, but they're Warner Brothers Discovery now, which is basically Warner Brothers, HBO Max, the Discovery family of cable channels, plus the TNT, TBS, all that kind of stuff. Paramount says, nope, we're going to do a hostile takeover. We want to offer to buy everything under that umbrella. And Chris, tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I heard, part of Paramount's intention was to do it to help save the theater end of things, whereas there's this big fear that Netflix buying the Warner Brothers and HBO Max part is going to negatively impact an already troubled movie theater industry.
Well, there's a lot in that, Jay.
Yeah.
I will just say that before I answer, I'm always grateful to be invited, and I miss the Eastern Shore. And I do think it's important what you guys talk about. So I'm glad you're on 99, and I'll be happy when you hit 100. The funny thing about this question is everyone is talking about it because there are a lot of implications, meaning that for the customer, I don't know how many people are listening who are sort of know a lot about how the business works, but to start with, for the customer, it is going to mean less choice.
Really?
And it will mean, they're going to merge with one of them, Paramount or Netflix. Some people are saying that there's gorillas in this business, in the sense that there are companies that are just 25 times bigger than Netflix and Paramount, that if they wanted to, could buy Warner Brothers Discovery. So some people think that they're just not saying anything now because it'll make the price go up to have more buyers. But we'll see, but that would be Apple and Amazon. I mean, those two guys are two of the biggest companies in the world, right? And it's mostly because they do other stuff. So Amazon recently bought James Bond. They recently bought MGM. They've bought a number of networks around the world because they're a global company. But what's really happening is that content is super expensive. And the big stuff that lots of people watch or that you talk about is the expensive stuff. Every now and then something breaks through, and it's also Oscar time right now. They just announced the Oscar nominees. So the industry is just wildly confused at this moment because of the money. The thing about Netflix and the theaters is clearly Netflix business isn't hoping you watch movies in theaters, right? Like they want you to subscribe. The thing that I say, and this may be me going in the weeds too much, and if it is, you guys can stop me and I'll try to get out. But is that what's really going on? There's two massive fights that are happening right now in the entertainment business, and all your listeners are part of it. None of us even really realize. One is subscriptions as a way to pay for content versus pay-per-view. So, and not pay-per-view as in you buy it on your cable thing or DirecTV, or what I mean is you spend your money on one particular story. And that's where the theaters were so important. Is the theaters were the only vehicle where a customer can actually show with their money they liked one or not.
Right.
And all of us in the trickle down, myself certainly in this, we got paid whatever piece we could negotiate of the money that people paid to watch our story, right? Nobody does that anymore. So I could call them and say, give me 80% of all the money that people paid to watch my show. It doesn't matter because it'd be 80% of zero. Because subscription, which is what is Netflix's business, is different. And if you think about other retail things, very few things use subscription. The reason subscription is an awesome business model is because basically you're paying up front. You're saying, I'm going to give you $25 a month if you're Netflix because I think you're going to make something I want to watch next month, right? You don't go to a restaurant and say, listen, I'm going to eat here 10 times this month. So how about I pay you now for all 10 meals, right? And you give me a discount, and then I'll just come in and have whatever you're serving that day. You wouldn't do that. You'd be in the mood for whatever, and you like having a choice, and you want Italian, or you want go get some sushi or whatever. You want that choice, right? You don't do it with clothes. Nobody calls them and says, hey, I like your jeans. Every time you come out with a new pair of jeans, send me one. Here's $150 a year, so I'll get X amount of jeans. Now, what you do have is the Costco, where you pay a membership to get a discount, but you still pay. You don't leave Costco where they were just like, come in, get whatever you want. They'd be out of business in 6 weeks, right? Because people will be bringing the U-Haul truck and taking whatever they want because of the, they already paid, right? So that's one, is that Netflix represents the subscription model, which is bad for anybody who is living off, we're making things people like. That's been my luck, but also how I'm competitive. That's how we compete against each other. Get 5 movies come out in a weekend. Whoever gets the most also gets the most money. It's not that you also, you won because people liked your movie. You also make the most money, right? So money is a motivator. It shouldn't maybe be the only motivator, but it is a motivator. So the choice will change because when you're doing subscriptions, you're not competing against anybody. All you're really doing is looking at that menu. And the truth of the matter is, and you guys may be more active than I am, but you're tired, you get home, you turn on Netflix, menu shows what, 5 choices? Maybe 10. You can maybe say, I want a comedy, you know what mood you're in, you'll get 10. They pick all that. They choose all that. Now, some of it's based on what you watched before, but some of it's also based on, hey, we want people to watch this. And so that's a big reason why people are fired up about Netflix buying, because Warner Brothers is one of the best libraries of content, because Warner Brothers TV made a bunch of shows you've heard of, and Warner Brothers movies, and they own DC, and they own Looney Tunes, and they own all these things people love. Then that, like Warner Bros. TV has Friends, it has these other things. So if Netflix gets that, none of those people are going to get paid anymore, because Netflix isn't, nobody, and I'm sure you don't if you're subscribers to Netflix, you don't fill out a form every month that says, these are the 5 movies that I watched, which is why I want to subscribe to Netflix, right? Or like right before we turned on recording, Cathy was talking about how she loves Stranger Things. She even thinks Stranger Things might be her favorite series ever, right?
It is a favorite.
Cathy, you would sign up and say, I'll pay the $29 a month in order just to get Stranger Things. Well, if you're the Duffer Brothers or any of those actors you like Joe, your new best friend, you wish that they would pay them on everybody who signed up just for Stranger Things. The truth of the matter is, Netflix, even though they'll say things like most watched, or they'll say people loved it, or we had the most people in the first 24 hours watch that finale to Stranger Things, right? There's no checks that come from that. There's no benefit. So some of it does affect the quality of work. But the other reason is that subscription models are fully and almost all, and I may get in trouble if somebody listens to this, but when you work for a subscription company, your whole goal, particularly when you've reached a place where you probably, every person who can get Netflix right now, technically, like has a high-speed internet connection, has decided whether they're going to get Netflix or not. There's no new country. There's no new group of people. Everyone knows. So no matter what Netflix does, they're not getting more people to subscribe. So they will always have fluctuations. Some will quit, some will come back, some will go. There'll be new generations. They'll do shit like they probably did it to both of you guys. They certainly did it to me. Password sharing, you can only share with a few people so that they get more people to sign up. So what they need is more stuff that is already stuff they know people like, right? So making more Batmans to be only on Netflix makes you stay Netflix, right? And that's the problem, is they're motivated to not lose you. They're not motivated to gain you because they already have you. Now, some of their motivations might be price point. So you guys may do the Netflix with ads. You may pay for the Netflix without ads. But the point is that they really are at a place. So the reason they're trying to buy it, and they don't care really about the discovery part, is people aren't really subscribing to watch the cooking show. They like it, they'll watch it, but if it was just cooking shows, you wouldn't subscribe to it. So what they want is to get Wonder Woman and to get the DC and to also get all the great movies they made and all the library, and then also have Warner Brothers making new stuff, And so that's one worry, is that if Netflix gets it, all of that stuff will now be in subscription. It'll be at one place. They can do whatever they want. Now he's come out, Ted Sarandos, and said, there will be movies that are made for the theater and we'll still support the theater. And again, to be in the weeds, the fight isn't really whether it's in the theater or not. It's how many theaters and for how long. So when the proud class of 85 was growing up, you knew the movie would be in theaters for 3 to 6 months. Then it would go, most likely the next place it would go would be home video. If you had, we're old enough that we remember VHS and Betamax. But you could watch it at home, uncut, whatever. Your parents had to say yes. I remember going to Joe Del Biondo's house and watching the first Terminator, and I was just like, holy shit, that's the greatest movie I've ever seen. Why didn't I see that movie in a theater? Right?
That's great.
But the point was that, and then it would go right into pay cable. So you'd be at home yelling at your mom, buy fucking HBO, mom. Because again, uncut, no ads, HBO, home box office, right? Then it would go to the discount home, right? So you see it in Safeway, you see it at the $2 rental you could buy it. Then DVDs came and people started collecting movies, right?
I was that person.
Right. and you had whole walls of DVDs and whatnot. And so the problem was every one of those things, DVDs, you buy and you pay people on each individual movie. I'm sure the checks I've gotten for American Pie are mostly based on people getting the DVD. It did well in theaters, and we did make 4 of them for theaters, right? But we also made 4 of them straight to DVD. But every time somebody watched it, they were paying me to watch that movie, right? When that ends up on a streaming service, no one is paying to watch it. They might watch it, right? But you'll never know and you'll never get paid. So that's the big problem with Netflix. Now, Paramount wanting to buy it is because there's a size problem in Hollywood. These movies cost so much that you have to have so much money to make enough stuff every year to really be one of the big players. I personally believe there'll be smaller players who are still making stuff and doing things, and every now and then they'll make a hit. And there's some Oscar movies like Marty Supreme I liked. I liked One Battle, after another.
2024 is kind of that yeah.
And stuff like that. There's a couple foreign films, a guy from Good Will Hunting, which was a movie I got nominated for, a movie called Sentimental Value that they made in his home country. He's a great guy and I'm happy for him, right? They'll make some money on that movie, but it's never going to be Good Will Hunting. He's also the scientist in the Marvel movies and Thor and the other stuff. So I'm sure he makes a lot more money in those movies than he did in Sentimental Value. But the point is, they'll still be making them because all of us are idiots and we love it. It's the greatest thing ever to get to make something. And if you're like me, you've made something that was a hit. You can't get that feeling out of your body, The reason Paramount scares people is they're not that solvent. They're not like, nobody thinks Netflix is going out of business, right? Paramount might go out of business. If Paramount buys Warner Brothers and goes into a lot of debt to buy Warner Brothers, they're closer to going out of business. And now 2 of the big studios, Paramount and Warner Brothers, will go out of business. And then again, one of these big companies come buy it, right? And so that's what's scary to people like me who work in the business is not only is nobody paying directly for the stuff. Now, Paramount has Paramount Plus, but most of their big original stuff, Mission Impossible and Landman and, Taylor Sheridan stuff, they don't make that to premiere on Paramount Plus most of the time. They're trying to make big stuff. CBS, you want to watch NCIS, the new season. Then Paramount Plus becomes the place it lives once it's already been launched into the world, right? Now, some stuff in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th season, it premieres on Paramount Plus so they can get more viewers. But again, Paramount's business is to make, more Top Guns, not to sort of, as Netflix, to have all these subscribers. So we'll see. The problem is they don't, even though it's Larry Ellison, who's like top 3 richest guys in the world, he's not the same as Netflix, right? And so it's a scary time because either way, one studio's going away. Fox is already gone. It got bought by Disney. MGM's gone. It got bought by Amazon, right? And some of the bigger brands like James Bond got bought by Amazon, And so slowly we're going to be down. And the example I try to give people, and I know this was a super long answer and I apologize, Jay, but I'll just say, people don't follow book writing, like novels and fictional book writing, the way they do movies. They don't also follow music in the sense of how the business of music works. But the movie and TV business usually follows those 2 businesses in the way the business works. And the reason it's behind is it costs so much and takes so long to make movies and television shows that they're just behind, right? But if you look at those 2 businesses, there's only 2.5 record companies left in the world, not just America, right? And in the book publishing business, there was going to be only one. The 2 big ones were going to merge because they were making so little on each book, even though they're cheap, just writing and word processing. Hell, now people can just talk to their computer and write a book. But the problem was there's so many of them and there's marketing and shipping and other stuff, even ebooks, that they thought, well, we'll just merge. We'll do all the back end stuff, the printing, the accounting, all that stuff. And we'll have a bunch of little marketing teams. And that's what the music business is. Universal Music owns most every record label you've heard of. And they do all the behind the scenes. And I hate to say it, but it's the same thing with fashion. That's why Louis Vuitton, whatever, the guy who's married to Salma Hayek is like the second, fifth richest guy in the world, because his company basically makes everything. And they just put labels on it and make it differently because they realize that every company having to figure out how to make a suitcase was a waste of fucking time. There's one factory. Louis Vuitton can't make that factory busy all year round. So the factory started making stuff for Samsonite and then started making bags for Nike. And so then they were like, fuck it, let's buy the factory and we'll just make bags for everybody, right? The one that makes me laugh the most is sunglasses. Now, I don't know if you guys are big sunglass wearers, but there's all these brands, famous fashion brands, and Ray-Ban when I was a kid, and Tom Ford has his stuff, and all three of us are wearing glasses. Same with glasses, right? One company makes all of them.
I did know that, yeah.
And they design them. They do whatever the designer wants to be different, but there's no benefit in making it yourself, right? And so that's part of the problem, is that you realize as a customer that what you're really buying is the name or the fashion or the style, but the plastic, the color, the whatever is exactly the same, And so I think that's what I hope doesn't really happen, because I've had some success making stuff that the factory probably doesn't want to make, right? That the factory is going to say, that's too risky, or if you're making these A24, these art house movies, not enough people are going to buy it. So even though Marty Supreme is successful, it's probably going to make 70, maybe it'll get lucky and get $100 million at the box office. If you think about Hollywood as a factory, a movie that only makes $100 million versus Jim Cameron's Avatar, Fire and Dirt, or whatever the hell it's called, it's making $1.4 billion. Well, if you have the factory, you really want to make the $1.4 billion movie, not the $100 million movie. And we used to have a healthy enough business because people were buying each movie separately, right? That they would make both, and it doesn't matter because you're selling the movie itself, right? And so that's why a lot of the big technical companies went out of business too, like Technicolor. All of us grew up on Technicolor's out of business, gone. It's not like they don't make color movies anymore. It's just they don't need its own individual company, And so I just think this moment in time, because everybody has high speed internet. I mean, I heard Cathy before we turned on the thing telling her son about how she can hook the headphones on to the new giant TV. Like, that's really what's killing the theaters, is that Cathy and her sons have a giant TV with surround sound and headphones and
backlighting
and backlighting. And now and Netflix, and it's snowing and icy outside. Why the hell would they ever get in the car to go to the movie theater? And so that was a long summary to your question, that it's a big moment in Hollywood right now.
Well, Chris, let me, we've talked about, and it's kind of, in a lot of ways, the foundation of our tagline, self-care in movies. And for those of you, I've said this before, but for those of you who may not know, I've always been a movie lover, but I didn't recognize the mental health value of movies to me until about 9 years ago. I was going through a difficult breakup at the time. I decided I got to get out of the house. I want to start going to the movie theater every Friday night. And I just did it just as a distraction. No other intention. That was it. But what I discovered along the way, Chris, was, I don't know, I was a few months into that every Friday night process. I'll never forget it. I was driving to the theater one night and I felt my body literally just like a big exhale, just my physical body just relax. It was and it wasn't just about the watching. It was as much about the going as it was about the watching. It was I call them now that I know what it is, it's a mindset shifter. And I think folks, this is just my opinion. I think folks both on the filmmaking side and certainly the audience side, like I was, it is completely oblivious to the real, like, deep meaning of movies in our lives. We may not intend to it, like I did for most of my adult life, but there's just this just visceral thing, just movies in general, but there's also like this added thing about the communal part of going and sitting with 200 people in a theater. There's been studies about that. I can go on for days about that, but I think folks on both ends of that filmmaker audience relationship are, without any bad ill will, they just, and I'm sure filmmakers, in making a film, want to elicit emotion from the audience. That's kind of the whole purpose, whatever that emotion is. But I don't think that they're like, man, I really want the audience to really get a good mental health experience out of this. I don't think anybody, nor should they, especially 20, 30 years ago when mental health wasn't discussed in any platform, let alone in the film industry. But long way of getting to what my question is, and not just in the film industry, but any industry where consumers or customers are involved, is how much responsibility, and I'll ask you just because you're a filmmaker, how much responsibility does the film industry have in realizing there's a bigger there's this bigger thing with the relationship between what we do and the audience that maybe we haven't realized it in the past. But and really, I'm kind of speaking directly, indirectly to the Netflixes of the world who are like, this could potentially, have a even deeper negative impact on movie theaters. And let me back up. In 2024, there were 760 million movie theater tickets sold in the United States. In 1946, there were 4.6 billion. 1946, the biggest selling movie theater ticket year ever in the United States. Now think about what the significance of 1946 is. Right out of World War II, folks, they were clamoring to have something positive. So think about it. 4.6 billion people in the population of 1946 in this country went and saw movie theaters in the theaters. They were aching for self-care back then because they just experienced a world war. Think about that. 2002, 2003 was the highest, more modern numbers, 1.6 billion movie tickets sold in the United States. Now we're about half. But even at half, 760 million movie theater tickets sold, it's a mouthful. That's 760 million self-care opportunities that would, where else can you find a place where 760 million folks can go to find self-care?
Wait, isn't that how many people work with Cathy's group? That 760 million, right, Cathy?
Yeah, right.
Come on, channel markers should do that. Jay, it's a great question. And I would say to you that the first part of your question about what responsibility do we have, and I'm just, for the sake of this moment, representing my business, I am not at all a spokesman for Hollywood. What I would say is somewhere between 1946 and now, it became a business, not an entertainment. And I think anything, and I could give you a lot of reasons. In 1946, there was no television. So there was no way to have a communal story other than a movie theater, right? But still, given the population then and 4.6 billion, that's a whole lot of people who go in the movie theaters a lot. It's not like they went once, they went a lot.
And just the timing of what we were going through as a country.
Right. No, but I think you're right. I know that I fell in love and my parents got divorced. I was 11 and I wanted to be Han Solo, man. I went and saw Star Wars so many times in the theater. I got into it with my friends who were watching it. And I think if I don't know, a psychiatrist or somebody was on here, I think they would say that there's also a communal thing to it. And there's a lot of research right now about how the phone and watching stuff, like Cathy has sons, I have a daughter and two sons. When we're all together as a family, more chances than not, even though I have a giant TV and a good surround sound and all nice comfy couches, we're not watching together. Everybody's watching something, but we're doing it on our own. Right. And I think that there's some of that to what you're talking about, which for the business side, it's not 100% you make more money if it's a group thing versus if somebody just wants to watch Gilmore Girls for the 57th time, right? And there is some self-care where you watch, I mean, they call it comfort food. You're watching comfort stories. There's also, I did a study with the psychology department at Williams University years ago about attachment and how, and I do it all the time. Sometimes I find myself about to say something to my wife or somebody I see. I'm about to say it as if it happened to somebody in real life, you know, oh yeah, I have a friend who blah, blah, blah. And I realized, nope, that was on a show I watched. Like, it's not a real person, but I think it is because I love them, right? Like I tune in and see them every week. Hell, there's people that I graduated with from high school I don't talk to every week, but I see people on TV every week, right?
True.
And so I would say the industry doesn't 100%, I don't think, deserve the responsibility of we're trying to heal people, right? But what we do think a lot about, at least in the rooms I've been in and with the people that I know or decision makers and whatever, there is a sort of discussion of how grateful we are people will spend money to see what it is that we're making. So you have a responsibility to try to capture in some way like artists do. And I'm really not an artist. I'm more of the middleman between art and the audience. But the point is that where you're capturing the zeitgeist, right? So you will probably see some movies and television shows about immigration and families and people getting shipped out of town over the next 2 or 3 years because it's happening. It's pissing people off and there's fights in cities. You will probably see a number of stories because they're emotional and they're real and people relate to it. The thing I would say that I love about movies, and it's not just, I knew when I was 11 I wasn't going to become Han Solo, but the idea of the brotherhood, the idea of trying to conquer the bad guy, the piece of it.
Cool at the same time.
Yeah. And you know, the gear and the flying. And it's a very positive thing to be part of. And I think, you know, it can also be very educational and you can have that mindfulness thing watching someone go through tragedy. I mean, one of my, you know, other movies is called Manchester by the Sea, and it's really sad. It's about parents who lose their children in a fire and they break up and they can't get back together and the father cannot get back together. He cannot, it destroys him. When we were making that movie, we were like, woo, this is going to be tough. Like, do you really want people spending their hard-earned money and giving 2 hours of their life? And luckily, when that movie came out, and now there's enough marketing, whatever, hopefully nobody found themselves in the theater, watched 3 child-sized body bags come out of a burning house and didn't know that's what was coming, right? So for the people who have lost a child, for people who lost their brothers and sisters, for people who lost their parents, it was cathartic, right? They got to sit and watch it. For other people, some of us go through life and we project, oh my God, what would I do if that happened, right? Well, here's a movie. Here's an example of what somebody did when that happened. And we said to ourselves when that script was being written, and the writer, director is a really talented guy, he said, it's literally called the Hollywood ending when it ends happily. It's literally called that. Let's just do the not Hollywood ending. It's more interesting. It's different. And when we were growing up, there was a movie sort of like that called Ordinary People. It won the Oscar. Robert Redford directed it. It was, you know, sadly about a teen suicide. There were movies about divorce. There were movies about stuff that was happening in the culture. Now we have more ways to share that stuff. And you said correctly, there is more direct conversation about mental health and that kind of stuff. But we do feel a responsibility that, you know, you're capturing someone's attention for 2 hours and you don't want to be irresponsible. And you also, yes, there's some filmmakers, in my opinion, who will do the counter thing just because it's cool or just because it's different. I'm happy to say most of the time those movies or television shows don't do well, right? But a lot of these things come out of someone's imagination where they went through something and there was a whole alternate reality they went through in their head. And they think, well, I didn't go down that road. I didn't get divorced, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. I didn't become an addict, but maybe the better movie is if I did become an addict, right? And they go through the catharsis of all that as a filmmaker, as the person who's working on it, to say, okay, what would have been like if this had happened, you know? And so I think it's a great question. I wish more people in my business listen to your podcast, because I think that there are a number of people I've known and had the opportunity to work with who do care, and they think we have responsibility to show what the best of human nature could be. And you do have a lot of movies like that. A movie like Schindler's List, I mean, there's hundreds of World War II movies. Some are about guns, some are about battles, some are about espionage, some are about, you know, awful Nazis. And that one is about a guy who decided he was going to risk it all, try to save some people's lives using his factory, right? That's a good message to put out there. And that was some of the best filmmakers in the world, you know, Steven Spielberg, you know, at the height of their career, saying, I got to make this movie, right? Like, I want people to know that there are people out there who risked a lot, you know, and they saved a lot of people. And, you know, I think that's great. The problem is that slams into the money. And, you know, Schindler's List, a lot of people went to see. But there's a lot of movies that are made about great things and great things that happen, nobody goes to see. And then you're sitting in your office thinking, well, how many of these do we do? Now, my whole long thing about subscriptions, that could be helped, which is if a movie or a TV show, it doesn't have to make all its money back. It's got to make people psyched that they are subscribers. So like the most famous example of that was Sopranos, because HBO was the original one. It's the one that cost, you had to pay for it. You had to tell your cable company you wanted it. They charged you for it on your bill, even though you're already paying. So you were like, okay, I got to want to have HBO. And they went with I think the second scene, or maybe even the opening scene of that's supposed to be a gangster, you know, mob kind of show. He's in therapy. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, what if I was a mobster and I went to therapy? What is that guy dealing with? And by the end of it, right, you love that dude, even though he's killed some people, even though there's stuff going on, you know, and HBO is saying, we got to do that. And the reason they can take a risk on something like Sopranos is because the people are already paying. They don't have to worry about whether people will buy it or not, because they already paid. And so hopefully a company like Netflix will do that. And they've done some interesting stuff. They did, I forget what the one it's called, but about the kid suicide, 13th or something.
Yeah, so that was Selena Gomez was a producer on that one. Yeah,
yeah. And there's plenty of stuff that gets made, and there's some amazing stories that still come out. But I think that's part, I argue, as an old man, you know, in the business, who've been around for a long time, that the biggest problem right now is the business has taken over. Meaning it used to be this war between creative and money, right? And but the business is winning. And I think part of that is what the audience is going through. And I think part of it may be Hollywood's fault. We become too seen as part of one point of view. And our country definitely has got 2, if not 5 points of view. And so a lot of things, people aren't curious. They're like, nope, I know what that's going to be about, so I'm not going to go. You know, somebody like George Clooney, it's hard. You're either going to see it because you want to hear what he has to say, or you already know what he has to say and you don't need to see it, you know?
Well, let me ask you this, Chris. This is just my thought, because I'm thinking about, as you're talking about the business of movies, and of course you want to, you know, the object is for your movie to sell in whatever form. To me, you know, real or people, and you can do this several different ways, but something that people relate to, which has a real element to it. It can be fiction, but have a real element. I mean, to me, that's about as, you know, not that there's ever a sure thing, but that's like, you know, you're hitting on a portion of the crowd, you know, whatever that specific story is. You're if it's the realer, the to me, and I'm not a filmmaker, obviously, but the realer, the more chance you have of being successful. To me,
Well, I would argue to you, Jay, I'll use your own argument against you, which is the
not that I get it, Marvel, yes,
1946 argument, which is, I think if you were to look at the time of professional storytelling even if you just went with, filmed, right? Audiovisual, which is about to be 100 years old. That the ones that are realer, they have a direct relationship with what's going on in the world. So those 4.6 tickets, I don't know what the movies were that they bought the tickets to, but my gut is they were probably celebratory, maybe comedies, maybe whatever, because people didn't want to fucking go into real life, right? And I think, we're in a world now where I'm not sure people know, but the other thing you cannot underestimate is the customer now has so much choice. Whereas even when we were kids, and I joke, but we're not that old, right? Like you had 3 TV channels, maybe you were lucky and had a local channel, right? Then and you had movie theaters. And therefore what Hollywood was programming for you had much higher chance to affect everyone around you, right? So that also, I think, helps mental health, is that you're having a communal experience, right? Like Cathy and I are friends. We can't really talk about Stranger Things because I'm 3 seasons back, right? Now we can talk about how much she likes it and how cool Joe is, right? And you and I have talked a number of times about movies. You go see them and I'll say, oh, I haven't seen that yet, right? That wasn't possible when we were in high school, right? Like there was, I mean, when we were younger than high school, there was only one theater in town, and then the new one opened, the triplex or the hell. And I think now it has 4 or whatever. But the point is that's the other thing that I think storytelling has been a part of mental health since the day people existed, right? I mean, then people will talk about, the printing press, right? Now you could share stories with people. But before the printing press, it wasn't like people weren't riding their horses around town telling people stories. It wasn't like there weren't theaters that were trying to put on good shows, and some plays worked and some plays. People want to escape. People want to put their feet in other people's shoes without maybe having to actually, go to India and be chased by a tiger, right? You can see what that feels like, or I personally recently went to the theater and saw this Anacondas 2 or whatever, this funny comedy they made, and it just made me laugh. And I was like, those guys are fucking idiots. They went with the real, anyway, but the point is, I think there's so much to what you're saying. I think it isn't 100% direct to the filmmaking or the storytelling. It's also about the time. It's also about who it comes from. It's also about the culture. It's why for a lot of people over a certain age, British, even French, European television is way more popular than US television. For some reason, the US TV networks aren't hitting the more mature audiences. Like, you got a lot of these hit shows in England and other places that are, 50-year-old women are the lead. And, they just they haven't hit here yet. And that's because they think it's a small audience. It's England, whatever. But it's a really interesting time because we have to figure it out, because your point of, and it'll be a dialogue, people put out good things, then people got to go support it and relate to it. And then it sort of goes around in circles. Right now, the money side, the big budget side, the superhero side, my kids couldn't give a shit about a superhero anymore.
Really?
I don't, they're,
Mine do. Mine still do.
That draw has faded. I mean, look, I loved Marvel stuff, but
yeah.
I can't remember the last time I watched any of the new series on Disney of whatever.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing. I don't think that the superhero has faded. I think that we were so used to, we're gonna have 4 or 5 or 6 of these. We're so excited we don't have anything that's to start up to look at that. And for
Well,
some
they're
reason,
trying. What's it called?
but that did not work on streaming. As much as I'm a Star Wars. I think I probably wanted to be a Star Wars character too. And when they did what they did to Han Solo, I was pissed, like pissed. Like I came out of the movie theater.
They did him wrong twice.
And I was staring at the floor, and this kid said, "Get over it, he's dead already." And I was like, oh,
They froze him, and then his own son killed him later on.
that hurt my soul. I still have a problem with that.
Yep.
But anyway, but we did not like. I never finished The Mandalorian. I never finished all the things that I loved at the theater. And I'm kind of pissed at myself. Why didn't I do that? But I didn't. I moved on to other things. But I think another thing we need to think about, we could talk about content all day long, but at least I guess American culture, it's a daily part of probably most of our lives, some kind of content. Rather like, whatever, are you a news person, or are you a Today Show person in the morning? And then, my kids are on these phones all day looking at YouTube or whatever, or small clips. And then all of us, how many of us eat dinner with something in the background? Like for some reason, The Big Bang Theory is the evening entertainment show that's just in the background, right? And then we
Well,
all move into something else. We move into something else at night. I mean, it's even our babysitter, right? We've got iPads and phones that bring up our children. Content is very important in our culture. Very important.
And so what do you think? Do you think it should be regulated more?
well, I personally think
I
just
don't know that
on
you
the
can.
movie theater end of things, I think there are too many things being released in theaters.
Really?
I mean, because they're
Well, it's not getting
and
theater enough.
it's top heavy now. You kind of alluded to that a minute ago, Chris. Like the blockbusters, the avatars, the wickeds. There are that grouping of the $500 million plus gross. There are a grouping of that, and then there's everybody else. Well, that number of movies is small, but if you took that, I don't know what the math would be, but if you took that smaller group of movies that made tons of money, probably made more than that group of movies that's probably 50 times as many movies, probably made less than the smaller. The less percentage made higher grossing than the if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's been like that for a little while. It's that whole concept is fairly new because it used to be where the theater was packed no matter what was playing. There for a while, at least in Easton, you'd go if it wasn't packed, it was pretty darn close no matter what was playing. Whether it was just one or probably because it was one or two screens. Now there's six.
You didn't have a lot of choice.
Right.
Where are you going to take your date? Where are you going to go get to be in the dark by yourself? What are you going to do? Like, how many times can you park in the empty field? But I think, drive around the bowl. But that's, Jay, I think part and parcel of all of it. And I think, Cathy, your point is that what we all did, whether we knew we were doing it or not, was we just created a lot more of those background things. Now it's not just the TV in the background. And before that, there was no background. You had to go to the theater to have, right? Now, Matt Damon was on a podcast. They have a new movie, Matt and Ben, out on Netflix. And he was saying that they admitted to them when they were making the movie with Netflix that you got to make the movie a little bit differently because they know people have another screen going. They know it's in the background. And one of the comments he made was that it means you got to have basically dialogue that repeats the action that happened so that people who weren't looking at the moment the action happened can still follow along the story. And I happen to know he's 100% right, partly because I'm that guy.
We have two TVs side by side because they got to have a game on while we're
right,
watching.
Exactly. It's like
game's on silent, and then we're watching together the other.
Right. And so that's why I'm saying that this mental health part, the self-care part of this is our brains. I mean, again, and Cathy, you guys would know more, and you've studied it, Jay, because this is your podcast. But the way somebody described it to me, I've been in therapy. I'm not afraid to admit it. I've had some dark times. The thing is that your brain is trying to solve those problems. It's not a little muscle up there that's not doing shit. The problem is sometimes it does the wrong stuff. I will admit that I had some chemical issues. Part of that was just to shut my brain off. Like my brain is trying to help me, but in ways that are worse for me than whatever I'm feeling, right? Yeah, so to some extent, 11 years old, going to watch Star Wars 11 times in the movie theater, that was addictive behavior, right? That was me saying, I don't want to go outside of this movie theater. I want to be in that fucking starship.
Mindset, yep.
And the mindset, and it still can do that for you, right? And so part of the issue is we've created these other things. My kids now are finding the escape or the ability to be outside of their own brain, or the ability to avoid maybe unhealthy defense mechanisms about bad feelings. It is involved with content at some level, right? Now, maybe that's going to turn out as addictive and as bad as drinking or doing drugs, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, what I find, this is just an ironic thing. It's not funny in any way, but there's almost as much advertising now about don't text and drive as there was when we were growing up about don't drink and drive. Like literally more people are crashing their cars because they're texting, right? Or looking at their phone than drinking, because somehow we figured out maybe drinking and driving is a bad idea, right? But my point is, that's the example, is you need to get out of your head so much that you're willing to risk crashing your car, right? And God forbid you crash into somebody else, right? And to me, that's the part that I think business has overtaken, like making money. Somebody should stop and say, wait, maybe this texting thing, because it has a gyroscope in it. You can just say, look, if the phone's moving 25 miles an hour or faster,
You can't text.
don't text, right? Like, just turn off the text part, right? Or, I mean, look, I've driven on long drives where I'm on a highway. I'll put on a show on my phone, right? Now, and that's when that's when I'm with the Netflix people. Well, make sure you say it, because I'm theoretically driving, so I'm not looking at it, but I am looking at it. If some, moose ran across it right at the wrong moment, I'm definitely hitting it, right? And it's not going to be, officer, I had a 12th of Jack Daniels because my wife left me. I was watching another episode of Vera on BBC. Like, he's going to be like, what? So I think that you're totally right. I just don't know. And that's why I respect that you guys do this, and I want to come on, because I learn a ton talking to you guys, because the idea of self-care, in my opinion, like you said about the moment you had where the mindset changes, is something content has a big relationship to. And it has the ability to help people. And it has the ability to also fuck with people, excuse my language. I think the more people talk about it, the more professionals like Cathy and the people that work in this space think about that, maybe we'll get to a place. I mean, people like to use the word enlightenment. Someday the brain's going to get to a place where the defense mechanisms aren't totally ass backwards, right? But the point is that whatever that moment is, content's going to be part of it. These devices are going to be part of it. There's going to be, these things are unhealthy. This is bad. I mean, we have lived through in our lives, people change their mind about cigarettes, but there's still people who smoke. People change their mind about seatbelts. I even just mentioned one, theoretically, drunk driving and bad drunk driving accidents is less than it used to be, right? The point is that we came around on certain health stuff, saturated fat or whatever. But the point is that takes a long time, and not a lot of people have gotten to the ones with mental health unless you get, I think you said you had a woman who talked about yoga, and you have, if you start these practices and you start, I do a little meditation, not to sound like some California hippie, but I just calming myself down when I can feel it getting crazy, right, is better for the world. It's better for my loved ones, and it's way better for me, right? And storytelling maybe can give people a way to find that, right? I used to joke with and I've had a couple therapists because I'm old, but one of my therapists loved Karate Kid. And he created these things I should do, but he named them all wax on, wax off, And so my wife sometimes like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm waxing on. So, that's movies coming into therapy, coming into just trying to make light of it, acknowledging that you may need to wax on for that fight that you have.
So, Chris, before we switch gears to the trivia section, and this might just be kind of a rhetorical question, but how do we raise awareness of the movie and self-care connection? I mean, I know early on, I know when Cathy first came to you about coming on the podcast, and you're like, "So what's the podcast about?" And she said, "Self care movies." Even you, someone who's been around the film industry forever today, it took you a minute to kind of figure out that there is a real and visceral connection between the two. And now you're like, "Oh yeah," and you probably got it all along. It's just like myself. I knew I liked movies, but I didn't. The depth was not. I wasn't aware of the depth. So how do and I know my thought is sometime in 2026 is for I want to do a documentary, even if it's just an online documentary on my YouTube channel, talking about just that the connection between movies and self care, and just whether it's I don't know what format I want to do, whether if it's just interviews or whether I want to do roundtable, I don't know yet, but I just want to have just normal folks talk about not just, oh, I really liked, I'll give that movie a thumbs up or I'll give that one 4 star, but like, how did it make you feel? Like, really, how did it make you feel? And how long after you left the theater was it still rolling in your head? Because that's where and different. Look, you can go to a movie and it be just a distraction for 2 hours, and there's value in that in self care. If you're just distracted and it's just kind of a so movie, there's value in that for self care. But then there's next level where you're like, you relate and you like, it hits home in some kind of deep emotional way. That's next level. And those are the things that end up being on our favorites list for movies because they've impacted you some deep way.
But it's happening all the time. I mean, you may have started out going to the movies as a distraction. A lot of people probably do something for a distraction. You had a hard day, maybe you want to binge something. But the point that is very important is this whole social piece. I mean, at the end of the day, we're three different people, but we can come together with a common thing and have a conversation. If we all watch seasons 1 and 2 of Stranger Things, we have something to talk about. It makes us equal. It does bring out emotions in us. It does tap into our empathy, our compassion, hopefully, right? And that, don't you want that to feel human? Don't you want to have those feelings,
Well,
whether
but
they're sad, happy?
all I would say to you, Cathy and Jay, I think you should think about is movies and television, unfortunately, politicized itself. So, like a lot of times when people are sharing it and talking about it, it actually creates more tension than there was in the first place. How could you like that? Or, oh my God, it's about, and I'm just going to throw out some hot button things, but, it's about a transgender person, or it's about this, or interracial marriage, or it's about this, and so people today, in my opinion, are much more afraid, particularly if it's a big Hollywood thing because Hollywood has put itself in the liberal side of the world and the sort of whatever. So it's like, in some ways, the content itself actually stopped being something we can all share and talk about. Like, we were alive when 9/11 came out, the documentary, right? We were alive when the documentary about global warming that Al Gore did came out, right? Everyone who had a point of view about that wanted to go see it to learn more about it and to figure out what was going on. Today, if you made a documentary about global warming, they would say within the first 4 sentences of any of the press who made it. And by who made it, people would immediately know what the message was going to be. Nobody trusts. And so I think that's part of, whereas the other big thing that's happening in business, we talked about the companies merging and that kind of stuff, is sports are on fire. And I think sports is doing somewhat of what you're talking about, right? You can talk about the football games last weekend. I have a friend, she and I love tennis. So we're talking about the Australian Open, that there's, and I think that you're right, that you want these common things that you can say you have something common, but I'm not sure movies and TV are occupying that space right now, or people are sharing it quietly at first until they know what the thing is, right? It's like when the person you work with comes back from Comic-Con, they said they were dressed up as some anime cat the whole week. You say to yourself, I don't have a ton in common with this person. I think that's great, but I'm not going cat clothes in San Diego for a weekend, right? On the flip side, I dressed up in Harry Potter and went to see 7 and 8 in the theater back to back with my kids and a bunch of other people. And, I was a Harry Potter fan, right? Today they say, you know, there's just politics, and J.K. Rowling's revealed her view on certain things, and so now a lot less people are into Harry Potter. But the point, that's part of it, Cathy, is that we haven't, particularly as a first world country where everybody has phones, everybody, even, you know, different classes can share the last thing people probably would give up is their internet connection, right? And you know, that is the scary part, is that part of the reason they're so addicted to it is they know where to go to find the message they want. And in some ways that's the same when the movie theater was there for us when we were growing up. You go there and you'd see something fun, you have something to talk to your friends about, you might run into your friends, you might, you know, it yes, it was a distraction, but it also gave you something fun to do for 2 hours. And in my case, and probably how I ended up in Hollywood, is you grow up in a smaller town like Easton with stuff you don't see a lot of the whole world in your day-to-day stuff. So I saw windows into different things and different stuff, you know, through the big screen, right? And so I just think, Cathy, that's the hardest part about it right now, is I don't actually think people are using movies and TV shows until they know somebody else saw it. Like, I get people asking me about Game of Thrones all the time. I didn't like it. I don't know what to say. I got bored by it. It didn't
I never saw it.
right. So we could bond over the fact that we didn't fall for Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah. And then people, when you hear that you haven't watched, I haven't watched it, they're like, "What? How could you have not
Yeah,
watched that?"
exactly.
Same way, I'm like, "How could you not be?"
I only watched the last season and a half. Loved the last. I never went back and saw the other stuff. I didn't feel any need, and I loved what I saw. Loved it.
Yeah. But the point is, like, that concept, when I talked about Tony Soprano, all three of us knew what I was talking about.
We did.
Yeah. Right. And it's the same network, it's the same thing, but we didn't feel we had to watch it just to talk about it. In fact, it became part of who I am by that I didn't like Game of Thrones, but I love Lord of the Rings. Right? Now, you could argue in a staff meeting at a studio or television network, they're the same thing. There's wizards and dragons and swords and moccasins and elves and dwarves and, you know, whatever. And for some reason, I love those movies and I fall into them. They make me feel good. I was thinking, Jay, when you were talking about that list, the thing you really want to ask people in your documentary is, what are the things you go back to over and over again, sort of like a drug addict, right? Like, you know, and, you know, for me, I can throw on the Misty Mountain, just the fucking song, and it makes me happy, right? And, you know, my kids tease for Christmas this year. I'm 58 years old. This year, my sons bought me a sort of on canvas, hand painted map of Middle Earth. That's how ridiculous I am.
The one that
Right?
pops up in the middle of the movie to kind of show you where they are.
Right, exactly. You know, and but the point is, they've seen me and we've shared that as them being my kids, and we've watched them a million times, and they have the ones they like and ones I like, and we have the characters. But again, part of the reason I love it is it reminds me of this great time I have with my sons. Right?
Yeah.
You know, my daughter and I watched other stuff that we love, but it was this common thing. But I think that could be a problem in the larger thing about having all this. I mean, you have a supercomputer in your hand, right? We haven't really researched what does that do, right? And we may have to find out a negative way with all the AI and whatever, because it is
Our
gonna,
attention span much smaller.
yeah. And but you have no patience. Like, I was in a meeting with some parents 2 or 3 years ago at one of my kids' school, and they were like, we got to do everything we can so that your kid has boring time every day. Like, they have to learn how to bring themselves out of being bored. And I was like, I get what you're saying. It's like when doctors say, let your kids play in the dirt, right? Like, you're trying to pretend that the past was somehow better because we played in the dirt. Or, you know, I certainly was a latchkey kid. I was living in town in Easton, riding around on my bike, doing whatever the hell I wanted while my mom was working, right? Many people doing that now? I don't think they are. But the point is that all of these things don't necessarily mean they're better or worse or whatever. But that idea of sort of the how do you fight boredom. I get what the advisor, I think it was some parent meeting with some genius, but I remember saying, like, we'll never be able to do that without forcing some unnatural thing, which is you can't have your computer, your TV, or your phone. You might as well just put them in jail. The point is that's how they figured out boredom is they have all these devices. And by the way, when we were in grade school and kids in the late 70s and early 80s, if the phone existed, we would have used it.
Indeed.
So I just think the thing, Jay, I would say that's so fascinating is maybe it's what do movies and the theater experience say about a communal experience that, and to Cathy's point about having stuff that's in common to talk about, it can't all just be, is this kid going to be a good coach for the Ravens, right? Why do the Wizards suck? Are the Orioles ever going to be good again? Or I guess the Nationals or whatever. Like, we can talk about that, right? But everybody's not a sports fan. Some people don't like football because it's so violent. Some people don't. And that's why I'm saying we may have lost some of the common ground, and now we're getting more and more afraid. It's what I love about our class. We just had a reunion. Cathy deserves a lot of credit for putting it together. But I love that we want to see each other, and we all have different politics and different lives and different situations. We still love each other. We still have this common experience. We're still supportive. Nobody seems to want to come to the events to convince people to think something else. They're just, okay, that's whatever. And I think we need more of that. And movies and the movie theater used to be that. And I'm not sure it can ever go back because of the internet and the phone and that kind of stuff. But maybe there's stuff that can get done that has that same positive self-help thing where you can find yourself and where you can, sort of calm your brain or escape your situation or whatever.
Well, the value, Chris, lies not in that we necessarily, and don't get me wrong, it's cool when we can talk about, like Cathy and I, whether it's on the podcast or whether it's in the middle of the week when we've watched the same thing on streaming. It's cool that Cathy and I could talk about something that we don't always agree. That's cool. But I think the bigger value is the three of us can go to the same movie and literally sit in the exact same time in the movie and get something different from that movie.
That's true.
That's, to me, that's the real self-care, because Chris is pulling out what matters to him out of that movie, and Cathy and I, and it may or may not all be the same thing. That's true self-care. That's the self in the self-care part of it.
Now, do you feel that way when you read a novel?
I don't read. I'm not. And look, I love imagination, and I'm created by nature. I'm not any good at a lot of creative things, but when you read, you kind of have to create a visual in your mind of what the author's trying to say. I would rather have it right in front of me.
Yeah.
So,
and have you ever gone to plays and stuff? I know it's not quite as easy where you are, but
I have. It's been a while. I'm kind of hit or miss on plays. I've seen like the local, when the high school kids did Annie a few years ago. Fantastic stuff. I mean, there's a smaller group of plays that I would be willing to go see versus the movies in the theater. But my point is, whether it's movies or yoga or gardening or the million things that Cathy and I have talked about in here. The thing is, what are you getting out of that movie? It doesn't have to be with your spouse, your kids. It's probably not going to be, but it's the self. You're getting what you need out of that movie. It's like a fingerprint. All of our self-care is there may be some commonalities, but there's going to be some very specific things just to Jay or Chris or whoever. So yeah, I would love to figure out a way to, and I try, I do the social media thing where I ask questions and I talk about, hey, how do you feel about movies? Just to kind of do a little side research for what I want to do in my documentary. But we'll have to figure out a way to bridge that gap between the movies and self-care and make people kind of more aware. And again, their self-care is going to be different from me, and that's okay. You don't have to get the same thing out of it for it to be a positive self-care experience. You shouldn't. Yeah. So let's switch gears real quick and hit a little Cathy, hit a little music and movie trivia, and see if we can stump Chris.
That's not going to be hard.
Mine's so easy.
I am not a cultural
I picked an easy one.
guru.
So you want me to start, Joe?
Yep, go ahead.
So American Idol resurfaced last night for season. I don't even know what is it. What season is it, Jay?
I don't. It was good, whatever it was. Yeah.
And Jay and I had a good experience last night. We were going back and forth about that show. But my sister-in-law's comment was, well, I said in my home, we were watching it together, three of us, and I said, there was a mom with a kid. And I was like, Dylan, what do you think I would do if I was an American Idol and you were the singer? He's like, be networking like those judges, like nobody's business. And I was like, what? I was like, no, I'd be crying. I'd be so mama touched. He's like, oh, that's bull. He's like, you would be so whatever he said about Luke Bryan. You'd be so about Luke Bryan. You wouldn't even see that I was singing. I was like, oh my God. But I was saying that to my sister-in-law. She said, well, I'm more impressed that you're still watching American Idol. Anyway, so this is about American Idol, which they did a good job with last night with that human connection.
It was really good last night.
This is easy. Who holds the record for the most albums sold by an American Idol alum?
Isn't it Carrie Underwood?
Okay, that's your answer.
That's
Jay?
I'm going to say Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah, could be her.
It's Kelly.
God damn it, Jay.
I thought you were tricking me by saying alum and not winner, because Jennifer Hudson didn't win and she sold a shitload of records.
Kelly Clarkson has sold 10 million records.
That's it?
I mean, I think
that
that's a
doesn't,
lot.
to me, that doesn't, I mean, there are folks out there like One Direction has sold like 50 million
Right.
records worldwide.
Carrie is second to her, to Kelly. But I would think that Carrie would be more popular. But anyway, there you go. That's what I got.
Well, she got to do the Monday Night Football songs.
Yeah. So mine was kind of based on what we talked about a little bit tonight. So mine is a streaming question.
Mm.
So there's different things that go into this, different ways you can equate this question. And where I looked, they kind of combined it and tried to make a guesstimate. But what is the most watched streaming show or event ever? Streaming.
I mean, I seem to recall seeing something recently that it was one of those NFL games last weekend or 2 weekends ago. But is that live, or are you talking about overall?
Overall, not just as it
Friends or The Office.
I think he's tricking us with event. I'm going to say
I would not have guessed this, but now that I know it, I get it.
I'm going to say, I'm not going to say it's a show. I'm going to say it's an event. I'm going to say it's like WWE or what do you call it? Whatever. What's the latest thing that was just
UFC.
UFC. My kids are all about that. Very mixed martial art.
Now those things like that, like Chris will say, they probably do well at the time they play. And they get watched later on as well, but that if it's a big fall off. But like we're talking like folks that go back a year after it came on and are still watching it. So number one is Squid Game.
What? I don't even know what that is.
It's either, I can't remember if it was Japanese.
I have to say I loved it. The first season I loved. I think they went too far. But that's why I can't believe that's number one, just because it's so new.
Well, the original season, 1.65 billion hours. Not viewers, but hours of viewing.
That's crazy.
It's number one. Season 4 of Stranger Things is number 2. And then they kind of, after that, they have kind of a cluster of the show Wednesday, the show Bridgerton, and then the Jeffrey
So is that
Dahmer.
just on Netflix?
No, that's just anywhere. So
That's crazy.
I did not watch the original Squid Game, so I would not, it never occurred to me, but once I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, I get it now.
The original one, I mean, it's a clever idea, and those actors were good. The funny part about that is nobody knew, and it's Korean. I mean, that's the other big thing that changed. It's a Korean show, and it's in Korean. Like you either listen
that with their version too,
to dubs or you read it. But it's amazing that it's not one of these comfort ones. The Stranger Things makes sense in the sense that that's also been around for a while. But I mean, I just my kids, like you were talking about Big Bang Theory, like there's so many things like that that just go on forever and ever. I mean, The
Friends.
Office, right?
They
Friends,
probably have consistent viewers over long, but not like this big giant cluster, and then it just kind of
that is crazy.
yeah.
Well, the
Uh,
thing that's really funny about it, and people have tried to copy it and they can't, they haven't figured it out. And I don't know if that's because it's Korean, but uh, it's a, it's a competition
right,
inside a scripted show.
right.
So like you get the same feeling you have about American Idol, where it's a competition, you're into it, but you also are watching a scripted mystery kind of show. And so it's like, that's pretty smart how they pulled all that together. But I didn't watch the other seasons. I felt like I'd seen it. This is now they're just going to rip it off and whatever. But I really liked that first season. So I guess I'm part of those hours.
Lastly, before we get out here, what have you guys been watching lately that you liked?
Who do you want to go?
Ladies
For me?
first.
I'm watching The Pit.
Season 2 or season 1?
So we just binged the heck out of season 1. So I'm right at season 2 now. I think there's only 3 episodes out so far, but I was a big ER Dr. Carter fan. So that is what got me there. But he is doing an amazing job acting. And I am so stressed out watching that. I'm like, for the love of God, can anything else happen in this hospital? But and then, it got me all in my human service feels. Like, we talk about first responders a lot, and I'm glad, but do we talk about emergency department as first responders? And I thought, my God, if I could never handle that kind of work. That's a special kind of, but anyway, it's a good show. It's just,
I love the idea of it. I've only seen a couple episodes, but it's
and they'd be brilliant if they brought, like, Anthony Edwards,
George Clooney popped back
Dr.
there.
Noah Green. Like, I mean, they're not. I call him Dr. Carter, but he's not Dr. Carter. He's Dr. Robbie in this, but he's still Dr. Carter to me. Like, bring Dr. Noah Green in. That would be brilliant, because our generation, Gen X, likes nostalgia. We like the past. Bring it on.
What about you, Chris? What have you been watching lately that you've liked?
interesting. I have two answers, which maybe is unfair, but I look at movies and TV separately. So I want to hit them both because I like them both. But I actually really like, and this may be too horror-y for people, but I like this 28 years later. And I find that guy, Danny Boyle, and that story of sort of what would really happen if we had this outbreak and whatever. And they had some good ideas, and Ray Fiennes is good. I was just fascinated by the whole thing, and I thought it was good. Now there's another one just came out called Blood something that I haven't seen yet, so we'll see. I didn't know they made two at the same time, so
These are movies.
yeah, it started at 28. I think it
28
was
days and 28
28
years.
days later. Then it was weeks, and now this one was years, and then I think this last one's the end of it. But it's basically a guy wakes up in the hospital and everyone's dead because there's a virus, but he didn't get sick, and then it's pretty. I find the sci-fi, the sort of what would really happen, kind of really interesting, and I thought this one, because you do wonder, like 30 years later, what happens if there's still sick people walking around infecting people? And basically, what they did was they quarantined all of the United Kingdom, so they just sent everybody who got bit or whatever, and they're just all on that island in Ireland, and like, and sort of what do you do kind of thing. So anyway, I really enjoyed that. Admit I didn't make it to the theater. I watched it at home, but and then I do like this show, and I'm not alone, called Blue Lights, which is a British cop show. It's on Prime now, and it's just really good writing and acting. Like it is. It reminds me of the old school American ones, like Hill Street Blues, or what was the other one with NYPD Blue? Is that what it's called? Or um, and in the first 10 years of Law and Order, like, it's dark, the characters are not perfect, it's sort of ugly, but it's real, and it's that concept of ripped from the headlines, right? What people are doing to try to live through. In some ways, it's a great one to recommend on this podcast, because the whole thing is about the mental health and how police are supposed to be trying to help, but then there's also their own mental health. And it's set in Ireland, and they still have some of these remnants of the war, the Irish Republic War, and those people hate the police. So there's times where they have to stay inside because they get intelligence that someone's trying to kill police. And like that threat, I feel so lucky. I've not lived really in a place where I'm just constantly under threat that somebody might be planning on killing me. And so I'm fascinated with how people deal with that, and so maybe there's a consistency in the two things, but that's what I've seen recently where I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, wow, I really like that. And then in Blue Lights last night, it's over, it's out, you can watch the whole thing, but my wife and I aren't caught up, and she started crying in the episode last night. I was shocked. It was an awesome scene, but I don't know that it was tear worthy.
I've been a crier lately on shows. I want a movie. I have not. I saw Avatar was the last one, and I was a little underwhelmed.
The one right now that's out?
Yeah, I was like,
that's the hard part, man. It's really hard to impress anybody now.
But there's we had somebody on the podcast where they loved it and it made them very emotional. It didn't do anything like that for me, but that's okay, But I'm looking for my next movie that I really want to see. Maybe I should see that Marty Supreme.
Cathy, speaking of, remember we were watching Idol and that ad for It's Not Like That. I started watching it. It's a series. It's actually a series.
It's not a movie. Okay.
I started watching it last night, and I really liked it. I found, Chris, that because I've been so conditioned growing up, you watch TV series at night. Like when I stream my series at night. I watch movies whenever. Doesn't matter what time of day.
Right.
But I watch my series, and I intentionally do that. It's so funny.
Well, I've intentionally become this crazy person, which is I won't start a show until I know all the episodes are available.
I know.
So like when you just said, they're only into 3 episodes of The Pit, I'd be like, well, I'll just be waiting for it to be over. There's a new Hijack on Apple that Idris Elba's in. I like the first season. And my sister-in-law, we shared some of the things that we watched together. She's like, I got to ask you a question about something that just happened in the episode of Hijack. I said, nope, it's not over yet. I'm not starting it till it's done.
So you wait till a season's out.
Yeah.
You'll watch a season.
See, that's so different from when we grew up because you didn't get that chance.
You never had that option, right? But I'm a guy who needs closure of the story.
Right.
My brain goes fucking nuts. Like right now in Blue Light, my wife, after the episode was over, she needed to go to sleep because we only have 2 more episodes. I would have been the guy who'd be like, fuck it, let's stay up and watch the end of the show, right?
Yeah, we have a binging problem. It's hard for us to stop.
Yeah.
Now, if Chris, if I'm late to a show and I start it, a lot of times I will watch it all the way through. But
Yeah.
I'm fine if it's brand new and I just have to wait each week.
I got so angry. My kids were with me. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. So I did like the Law and Order shows. And, I have my favorite and I have my characters I like, but that's my kind of show, murder mystery, kind of whatever. And I think they have a good lower balance of all the personal bullshit versus the actual mysteries or whatever. So I had seen this article and read this article Mariska Hargitay did about, it's 20 seasons. That's enough. We're not going to do any more SVU, whatever. So I was like, I'm going to go back and watch the whole fucking show. 20 seasons. And that show started when seasons were like 26, 30 episodes. Right now, granted, I had it in the background some places because it's in English and you can follow, but I was watching through and literally I got to the last season and I was watching the last episode and one of my buddies from college sent me a text that she just agreed to do another season. And now it's on like season 25. And so I'm so pissed because now I got to keep waiting to see, because it's also her character. Like the thing about Law and Order, the original, is they've changed everybody. There's not a soul in the current Law and Order that I saw way back with Chris Noth or, Lenny Briscoe or whatever. But it's like this one, it's still her. I mean, Stabler comes in and out, the other guy.
He's still there, yeah.
He came back and it was major crimes. I mean, it's funny but I was just so mad because I was like, I wanted to see what they do with them at the end. That's why when Cathy said she loved the Stranger Things last season, I was like, okay, I got to go back and watch. I remember 1 and 2 enough. I started watching the last episode of 2 just to get geared up. And then, Jenna was like, it's too gross. It's too gruesome. It's too bloody. And I was like, I think Winona Ryder's great in that show.
She is amazing. I think she's.
I love her in that show.
So, Chris, if you like murder mystery, there's a new one, and it's on, I think it's Netflix. It's called His and Hers.
Yeah, we just binged it. See,
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, I like those actors. I like that thing. And it.
Now,
I was
We probably watched that one.
I was totally into it.
Jessica Chastain was one of the executive producers on that. I just realized that after I
Wow.
watched it. It was so good. And it's funny, without giving too much away, I figured out who did it, but then as other stuff started happening, they got me off of that. So I figured it out earlier on, but then as the twist kept happening, I'm like, oh, well, it can't be that. But then it ended up being back to where I thought it was to begin with.
You're a genius.
What is it?
It's a series. I think it's 6 episodes, like a limited.
Yeah,
Oh, I haven't seen
docu
it.
series. Yeah, whatever it is.
But
But it's
she,
fiction,
uh,
yeah.
I have to watch.
The show did one thing different from the book,
I didn't read the book.
and I didn't read the book either. I just happened to check it out. There was one of those comments or whatever things about, and I'd be curious when someone who hasn't seen it isn't on to ask you. I'll tell you what it is and ask you, because it's a real choice. Like and I can just picture the Netflix executives being like, look, this works in a book, but it'll be better like this in a show. And you're just like, okay.
Well, it's like that other movie that just came out. Netflix did off a book, and my daughter-in-law read the book and said it was a little different. I can't remember the name of it.
All Her Fault. I love that one too. Speaking of murder mysteries, have a lot of twists. That one's fantastic.
What I love about that one, Jay,
Who you meet on vacation?
that one, the All Her Fault, the thing that I was amazed by was the very end when the cop lets her go. You never see that anymore, where somebody makes a more, and I didn't disagree with them, but it was definitely not your normal ending to something.
And that was a really good cast. The lead actress was in
Succession.
Yes, love that. Dakota Fanning, although her character matters, she's secondary, but who played the cop?
Michael
Yes,
Pena.
Michael Pena. I love him. Great supporting actor. It's funny that you're so focused on the kid.
Right.
What happened to the kid. And then all of a sudden they slap you with all this family stuff. That's like the first 3 episodes, they're worried about the kid. And all of a sudden you're like out of the blue, all this family crap, but it's tied to the little girl big time.
Right. Exactly.
So good. Anyway, before we get out, I want to recommend one thing. And I had tentatively planned on coming on here, Cathy, this episode and complaining and having some comments about all the just negative, nasty crap we've been watching going on in Minneapolis and, all this stuff with what's all that kind of stuff. But I decided I didn't want to add negativity on top of negativity. You've all seen it. I'll just leave it at that. But if you want to see something that is the opposite of that, you want something good and positive and heartwarming and just something to make you feel good. This one came out of the blue. It had been going on for a while, and I didn't even know about it. Is the monks walking across our country, walking from Texas to DC, and it's just been popping up. Of course, on TikTok, once you watch one like that, they're gonna bombard you. And I tell you what, Cathy, I don't know anything about these, their beliefs or other than they're marching for peace. They're not doing speeches. They're just, they announce this thing they do. And Cathy, half of them are barefoot. They're walking 2,300 miles from Texas to DC. They've kind of gone through the South. They were in Charlotte the last I saw, but
They might want to wait a minute to get to DC.
I mean, so many people are lining the streets and just, giving them food while they're walking, or handing them flowers, or they'll have them stop and pray over a disabled family member, or different things like that. And just to watch the crowd, and it got me emotional watching, because I've been watching all this other just horrific stuff going on in the country, and I'm like, man, it wasn't lost on me that these these gentlemen are walking across the country at just this time. Just
Here, there's an argument. The negative news that's on, the antidote to that could be good movies and streaming.
but they
Yeah.
we talk a lot about trying to find our own internal individual peace. You know, what little bit I know, these guys dedicate their lives to being at peace, not just with themselves, but with nature and with their surroundings and the people they come in contact with. And now they're just, they're not forcing their message. They're literally just walking, half of them barefoot from Texas to DC. And I don't know what they're going to do once they get there. Maybe they've got something, I don't know. But just to watch, I was as much impacted by the crowd being so positively impacted by them as I was their message itself. And, you know, I look for them all the time now, and they'll
There's
tell you
something
you can
good
go
in
on,
people.
you can like follow the travels, and you know for a group of people that dedicate their lives to just trying to make the world better.
Me and Chris's phone have now heard this, and now we're going to see this on our algorithms, right?
It's
I'm gonna look it up, Jay. I love that it moved you because that's the idea is to move people.
there's nothing exciting about what they're doing. They're literally just walking, and apparently along the way, of course, they have to have police escorts through a lot of the places they're walking. And what the policemen have been doing for each area they go into is they give them a pin saying, hey, you came and walked through, Selma. They walked through Selma, Alabama. And we know how much that means historically. Every time they've got this one, the leader has all these pins from all these first responders for everywhere they walked.
That's cool.
They don't look like what we look like here. And they don't go about their lives the way Americans typically go about their lives. But there's just this, common goal of peace. And that's what they live for. They're just it's not what they do when it's convenient. They live their lives that way to watch people, and apparently people like me who didn't know anything about them are you know are now going and going to wherever they're walking just to be in their presence that would have not normally done that, just to feel. And people are I'm just watching it on screen. I'm not there to watch them in person. I can't even imagine. I would have been in a puddle, to shake their hand or something like that. So anyway, that's what I would suggest watching over anything right now is go online and watch these guys,
Gives you a little hope in mankind.
especially now.
Thank you for sharing that, Jay.
Right.
Seriously, I'm gonna check it out
Yeah. Anyway, Chris,
Yeah.
thank you so much again for joining us.
anytime. You know I love seeing you guys.
Yeah, we need to, like I said, we need to really hammer home that awareness for mental health.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about it.
The connection to that, and
I'll send you some ideas.
yeah, and anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in again. Sorry, I got to be an emotional mess at the end, but I just had to share that with you guys. It's something you guys should watch. So
Don't ever apologize for being vulnerable.
take care. We guys appreciate you joining us, and check us next time on Eastern Short Talk. Take care, guys.